guys, welcome back to the channel and thank you for joining me. Today in my 2005 Discovery 3 2.7 TDV6. I'm just going to start the video off by apologising profusely to all my viewers for my homeless look. We are currently still in lockdown. It's March now. Hopefully things are going to start getting back to normal soon, but who knows. So yeah, let's get into the video. So I've had this car for about 6 months now. Bought it just before we went into lockdown again. Had 5 Series 520i BMW, which to be honest we bought when my Range Rover blew up as an emergency car. We knew we were going around holiday the next week, so we needed a decent car that could fit the family in. Bought it for really cheap with the idea of it lasting 6 months maybe, and that was 3 years ago. So overall very reliable car, just really not very nice to drive, boring. So decided to change. I know in my Lexus video I mentioned I was getting a tow bar fitted to the Lexus. Long story short, that ended up not happening. The supplier of said tow bar kept telling me it was in stock, got delayed 2 months, 3 months, never really came to fruition. I then decided to pull the plug on it. By the time it was fitted, it was going to be the best part of £1,000, which is quite a lot of money to spend on a tow bar when you can only tow 2 tons. So instead I decided to put the money towards getting a large 4x4 that could tow 3.5 tons. So did a bit of shopping around, you know, sort of had a look at what options there were. Obviously there's huge amounts out there, lots of options. So I had some criteria that had to be met. Had to be manual. I was fairly set on that. There was a couple of trucks that would have potentially swayed me to auto, but only because there was no other option. But my idea would be manual, as low spec as possible, so as little to go wrong as possible, and had to tow full 3.5 ton. Initially I started looking at pickup trucks, just because of the practicality. I wanted something that was cheap, so I wanted sub £5,000, and that I could not really care too much about. I like the Lexus too much to be filling it with plasterboard and going to the tip, and just, that's how you ruin nice cars. So I decided I wanted a workhorse, doing quite a lot of building work at home and that, and yeah, just needed something that could I could just sling stuff in the back and not have to really care about. Anyway, after doing lots of digging and research, came to, no matter what I did, I always ended up coming back to Discoveries. You can look into them and then you find that, you know, everyone moans about the reliability and stuff like that, but in the next breath someone will then say, well, it's the best car they've ever had, they'll get another one, they've had one for 15 years. Yes, they're expensive to maintain, but you know, they are above the rest for comfort and overall usability. They are deemed one of the best. Certainly for the price range of what I paid for this, I struggle to get much. Obviously the idea would be a Jap, something like a Amazon Land Cruiser, but you know, you're talking almost triple the price of this, and yes, you won't go wrong, but for that money you're getting a car that's done over 200,000 miles, something does go wrong, they still have problems. They still have injectors go down, stuff like that. You've then got 8 injectors to replace, and they're 3 times the price of a Land Rover injector. So you know, it's you have to weigh it up. They're not. One bonus of that sort of swayed me towards the Land Rover is there is such a community out there of people, and the knowledge is there, and the parts are abundant. There are so many different options for any particular part. You can spec a part to suit your budget. So if you want to do really aggressive off-roading and lots of like you want it to last for 100,000 miles, then you can stick £1,000 worth of new suspension arms on it and stuff like that. But if you only want, if you know you're only going to be it's only a cheap budget car and stuff like that, you can spec some arms and you just accept they're going to last a couple of years. There's a lot of stuff on them that if you ask forums and stuff like that, or go to a main dealer, they will say you've got to take the body off to do it. Apparently it's only 10 bolts to take the body off, but it's about, I think someone quotes online, it's about a 20-hour job to take the body off. I don't know how true that is. But to be perfectly honest, if you're willing to get some wobbly tools and sort of scratch your arm up a little bit, you can do most things without taking the body off. You'll always find someone on forums or Facebook pages that's done that job without taking the body off. That's not to say it's not easier to take the body off, but like myself, I don't have access to a ramp or anything, so taking the body off is just not an option. So I paid just over £3,000 for this. It's full year's MOT, like a week off the full year, so it was it'd just been MOT. When I bought it did have a few problems, which I knew about, but bodywork and interior are very clean. So I decided to, they're the bits I can't really do. I'm no good at bodywork and stuff like that, but I can fix mechanicals and that. So I opted for one that looked good, that could be made mechanically fairly sound. It doesn't have to be perfect, as long as it's safe and isn't going to keep breaking. That's what I'm after. So anyway, got it. One of the problems was it had a blown flexi on the exhaust just past the turbo. Knew about that. It was down on power a bit, which it sort of could be a couple of things looking online. Could be blocked EGRs, a couple of bits like that, or sticky solenoid on turbo. Meaning the planes aren't moving, and air suspension fault. Unfortunately, this has got air suspension. I didn't want one with air suspension, but most of them are 7-seat, and 7 seats come with air suspension. Certainly wanting a manual, trying to find a manual 5-seat in sort of fairly low spec within budget and not intergalactic miles was proving nigh on impossible. This one came up reasonable price. It's got some off-roady bits on it as well, which I wasn't overly fussed about, but didn't detract from it at all. So decided to go for it. So when it was sold, the owner said, and we looked through the paperwork, and there was receipts for new compressor a couple of years ago, and at least 2 new airbags. So I was fairly confident that it wasn't going to be any of the big stuff. Got it home. It was fine, a bit slow, but it was fine. And so first thing I did was went and ordered new downpipe because the exhaust blow was quite bad. Like it was quite a significant blow. It sounded pretty horrendous, and so obviously, you know, this is a cheap car. Rather than buying full cat downpipe, I decided to buy a catless downpipe. 100 quid versus 1,000 quid, so you know, fair no-brainer. Did that again. Another job that people reckon you've got to take the body off for. You really haven't. It's the most difficult part about doing it was the fact that the nuts had rusted. If the nuts hadn't been rusted, or if I would have had, you know, a better tool to get them off with an impact gun or a yeah, just if I would have been a bit better prepared for it, had some better tools for it, then, you know, it would have been fine. Access to the turbo, and that was absolutely fine. All I did first was just lopped as much of the downpipe off as I could and just cut it off, and that gave me loads more room around there. So did that, got the old one off, fit the new one. That was all fairly easy. Turned out the old cat was completely blocked, absolutely solid. So that's why the flexi had blown, because it was, you know, it was just boosting, but nowhere for it to go, nowhere for the exhaust to go, so you had to go out the weakest part. So fitted that. In the process of doing so, I also realised that someone's already fitted a centre silence and delete, which I wasn't sad about. Hence the fact it sounds fairly meaty, which I quite like. I mean, it's still diesel, it still sounds like a tractor, but it's yeah, it still sounds nice. Put that back on immediately. The performance was, you know, back up to how it should be. I mean, these aren't fast cars at all. Don't be expecting them to be fast cars. They weigh over 2.5 tons, and they've only got 190 horsepower. But it's the torque that, you know, you want, and that's what you want for towing. And I can safely say, having towed a couple of things, including the old 5 Series and that, it is, you know, it does tow very well. You can do a bit more grunt, which the 3-litre SD V6s have got a bit more grunt, but you know, it is good for it's plenty fine for this sort of size car. You don't really want to go fast in it. It's not very stable, but doesn't handle very well. So you know, it's just what it is. So that was great. So the next thing was to jump onto the air suspension, plugged it in, saw it had an error code for the rear left height sensor. So I was like, win. That's a 5-minute job to replace a height sensor. It's dead easy. So bought a new sensor and fitted it. Without realising at the time, you need. I mean, I should have done from previous cars and that, but obviously when you fit a height sensor, the calibration's out, so you then have to recalibrate the whole thing. So anyway, it thought there was something under the car, so it just goes straight up into extended mode, which is what it does when you can't. It tries to drop the suspension, but it can't. It sees an obstacle, so it then raises the suspension to a really high setting, basically, which you don't normally have access to try and unbeach itself for if you're stuck on rocks. Obviously it wasn't really high, it was just the sensor of that acceleration. Anyway, bit the bullet and paid the extortionate £500 for the Gap IID tool, which unfortunately, unlike every other mark of car, is VIN locked, so you can only use it on this vehicle. If you want to change, if you want to use it on a different vehicle, you have to pay the price of sum of £60 to add one other vehicle to it, and with a maximum of 10, which I completely don't agree with, but that's what it is. It's what everyone recommended, so I bit the bullet and bought it. And to be fair to it, it is a very, very good bit of kit. It's very worthwhile having. I just don't think it's worth the £500 price tag, but it is very easy, and I do use it quite a lot. So you know what sort of price to put on that. Anyway, recalibrated it all, got it sitting level, still wasn't happy. Still throwing up codes. So I was like, right, okay, so had a look, still related to the rear left drive height sensor. So decided, right, must be the new sensor. You know, I didn't buy a really expensive genuine one, I bought an aftermarket one. So I thought, right, I'll get another one from a reputable Land Rover place, and one that's got pretty good reviews. So I can then be fairly confident that that's going to be right. So anyway, fitted that. That's what's on it now. It sort of worked for a little while, but then still kept throwing up codes. The same codes, you know, general electrical failure. So I decided to buy a replacement repair loom for it. So replace the last 12 inches of loom and plug. So replace that, because it had been replaced at some point previously, and the connections weren't great. So I thought, oh, brilliant, maybe it's that. Wired up a new plug, worked for a couple of days, and then the light came on and dropped the suspension. So it's exactly why I didn't want an air suspension model. I apologise for the noise, it's starting hammering it down now, so hopefully it's not too loud. So anyway, it's still something that I've got to look into. You've probably heard it bong a couple of times. The problem with it is, although it's only a sensor calibration signal fault, what it does is a safety, you know, you use that term very, very loosely. What it does is by no means safe, because it dumps all of the air from the system, purges the whole system, and dumps the car on the floor, which in itself is fine. I mean, I've got the big grabber tyres on this, they still just about clear everything, so it doesn't rub or anything like that, but it is horrendously bounced to the point where it's incredibly dangerous to drive. I mean, it tells you to get below 30 miles an hour, and I think even at 30 it's a bit on the sketchy side. So you've got no option but to pull over. So you pull over and you can reset it by turning the car off and back on again. That's fine. But it's still, sometimes it'll go weeks without doing it. It will still have an orange light on the dash saying there's a fault, you know, the code will still be there, but it won't dump the air. And it'll, as I say, it'll do it it'll be absolutely fine, stay at all level, go up and down, no problem at all, for a couple of weeks, and then just randomly one day on the way to work, it will just decide to dump its air. Go red light, dump its air, and you can then turn it back off again and back on again, and you'll be fine for another mile, and then it'll dump it all there again. It'll just keep doing that for some reason. Every couple of weeks it just has a hissy fit. But it has led me to find something that is probably quite a handy feature for other people that only needs to know if they don't already know. If you've got a failure like that, where your airbags are okay, you haven't got leaks, or excessive leaks should I say, and your compressor is working, and you can get it to the point where with a reset it will go back up to normal height. If you take, under the bonnet, if you take out fuse number 3, it will then sit at that height. No matter what happens, it will keep bonging you every now and then, and you know, it will still have a light. It's by no means fixed, but it will mean you can drive home. You know, it's sort of a way of getting around it, and to the point, like, I've used it so many times that I'm going to wire in a switch. I want the switch on the dash so I can flick the air suspension off and back on again if it starts to mess around, and I can then reset the car ignition off and back on again, and then turn the air suspension off once it's pumped up if I need to within the car. At the moment, every time I do it, I've got to go under the bonnet, take the main battery cover off, take the fuse cover off, take the fuse out, and then close the bonnet. It's a pain. So I'm going to wire in a remote switch just because it's, you know, I use it so often. It's also what's recommended by a lot of people when you're jacking the car up, to disable the air suspension so it can't do funny things and try and self-level. There is jacking mode and things like that, but not that great. I'd much rather have the whole system disabled so it can't just have a fit and suddenly decide it wants to lower one corner or do something stupid like that and end up falling off the jack or axle stands. So that's something that's really handy, I think, for people to know for emergencies. You know, if you do get stuck, if you're on a journey somewhere and it suddenly decides to, for whatever reason, dump all its air. Again, another thing that the ID tool is fairly good for is you can go into it, you can see all the individual values of everything. So yeah, I mean, I think what I might do is I might do a separate video that goes into a bit more detail about a lot of that setup, that whole system, and maybe discuss some of my ideas of what I'm thinking of doing to try and rectify it and stuff like that, and maybe see if you guys have got some comments or tips or anything on how to rectify some of the issues. A couple of the other things that needs at the moment are a pair of front wheel bearings. They get a bit noisy. I mean, they're not expensive, and by all accounts they're pretty easy to replace because they're a separate unit, a bearing unit, just 4 bolts and unbolts, and then, you know, it's pretty about as easy as you can get really for a wheel bearing. You haven't got to be taking the hub off and pressing bearings in and out like you have on I think the rears are like that. Both rear upper arms, the bushes have gone in them, so I need to get a pair of arms. Again, everyone says it's a very big job, but mainly because a lot of the bolts will probably be seized, which I can fully appreciate. On a car like this, you know, it's done 147,000 miles. They're going to have been replaced at some point, just because there's no way they'll last this long. But yeah, they're going to be corroded. But you know, I'm sort of going into it with the idea that I'm literally just going to cut them out. The new ones come with all brand new hardware and everything, so it can all be replaced. So I'm just going to attack the whole lot with a reciprocating saw, cut the bolts, not even bother trying to undo them, just cut the bolts, cut the arm into as many pieces as I need to get it out, and just, you know, just do that, rather than trying to battle with unseizing bolts and stuff like that. Just go in knowing that it's all going to be seized, and just try and cut it out. So I'll let you guys know how that goes. That's the plan in my head. Whether or not it works like that, I don't know. Also needs a pair of track rods. There's a bit of play in the steering. Not sure whether it's track rods or steering rack. I know there's definitely play in the track rods. So that's the first place to start. The inner joints. So that's definitely the first place to start. If that doesn't solve it, then it's going to have to be new rack, which I'm not overly looking forward to. With regards to the engine, some of you may know these engines are considered grenades. They have an inherent crank snapping problem where randomly the crank will just snap. No rhyme nor reason. There's loads and loads of people out there that, you know, their cars go on to 250,000 miles on the original engine, no problem. Other people can get 50,000 miles into it and just have a crank snap, and it will have full service history, it would have been driven nicely, you know, it's been as nice to it as you can, and it still snaps. There's unfortunately, until I see a snapped crank, I can't put any kind of conclusion as to what actually causes it, whether it's a machine flaw, a forging flaw, or, you know, is it just an inherently weak crank? I don't know. So that's something you sort of always have to bear in mind with these, is you sort of have to. That's why I wanted a cheap one, a sort of sub £4 one. I mean, I paid just over £3 for this. So a replacement engine for one of these, a second-hand engine, is £2.5 grand. A reconditioned engine is about £4, and an original genuine Land Rover brand new engine is about £7, and that's plus fitting. So, you know, if an engine goes and you pay 10 grand for a car, you're fairly obliged to replace the engine. If the engine goes in this, and I pay 3 grand, I'm not paying 3 grand for an engine to do it. It's a scrap car, it gets broken to parts. I'll probably make most of my money back if I break it. It's got a lot of good bits on it. So, you know, it's something you always have to bear in mind. You know, it may leave you stranded somewhere. You know, it's just one of them things. As everyone says, you can't have a Land Rover. Well, you can't have any Land Rover as a main car. Right? You have to have a spare car. They're not reliable enough for that. They are very good. I do also believe they do get a bit of a bad rap. I mean, I know I've harped on about the air suspension, how that's unreliable and stuff like that, which, you know, it is, and it is a pain. But in the same breath, despite having an invoice for new airbags, upon looking at the suspension underneath, it has original 2005 airbags all round that have done 147,000 miles, and with the fuse out, this will still hold air for at least 3 days before it drops at all. And when it does drop, it will drop the front a little bit, but on both corners, not one particular corner. And I think it slightly raises the rear, which leads me to believe that that's not actually airbags. I think that's the one of the crossover valves is letting air leak from the front to the back, because obviously when it's unloaded, the front is heavier than the back, so the front is always going to try and dip down. So that's what I think's happening there, which, you know, does it every couple of days. I'm not really that fussed. I may end up replacing the valve at some point. They're not massively expensive, you know, it's probably a good thing to do anyway. Pretty sure it has had a new compressor, but unfortunately when someone's fitted it, they've broken some of the mounts. So despite the fact it does work well, it pumps up absolutely fine, no slow pumping or anything like that. It is a bit on the noisy side. That's one of the jobs on the list, to try and rectify that, whether it be replacement mounts or I don't know. I haven't had a proper look at it yet. So yeah, they're the things that are sort of wrong with it at the moment. I'm fully, you know, I've gone into this fully open-minded. I know more things are going to go wrong, but the way I saw it is, you know, if the air suspension is rubbish and becomes a pain, at least for these, unlike the Range Rovers, you can get coil conversions. You know, they did these without air suspension. You can buy those struts and replace them. I'd quite like not to, as I've got it, you know, as I've got the system, because it is a useful system. You can jack it right up to go off road, and it's got a nice access mode. It makes it a little bit easier for, you know, for people getting in. You know, it is a good thing to have. I do like air suspension. The Lexus got air suspension. I use it all the time. It is a good thing to have if it's not a pain and breaking all the time. So yeah, that would be, you know, even if all that sort of stuff breaks, the way I see it is, it still cost me less than a 5-year-old pickup truck would cost me, considerably less, because, you know, that's one of the things I was looking at. to be able to tow 3.5 tons, or an old clunky Isuzu Trooper or something like that. You know, they're similar sort of price range, similar sort of miles, a little bit older, but fairly bulletproof. They still have problems, they still have ejector problems and stuff like that. But you know, so but they're a full-on agricultural car. Like they sound. They've got 4-cylinder 3-litre diesel, and they sound like a proper tractor. And they're just very basic. You know, there is a lot of creature comforts in this. They've got auto lights, they've got auto wipers, all 4 heated seats. And this is only it's only a base model. No sat nav, nothing like that. It's got aux for the put my phone in. It's for a base model car that's cost me this amount of money. It's a nice place to be, and it drives well. You know, it doesn't handle very well, but it drives nice. It handles the bumps well, and it is a nice car to be in. I do sort of a lot of miles a year, and I spend a lot of time in the car. I want something that's comfortable. Anyway, that's the end of it. I will probably do maybe a part 2, or as I said, I might go into a bit more detail about possibly some of the problems, like the air suspension and that, if that's the sort of thing people want to see. I'm not sure if I'll do a video of me fixing any of it, just because I might do. It's just a bit boring, stuff like that. There's millions of videos online of people fixing these, so I don't know. We'll see. But anyway, hopefully this hasn't been too boring. And yeah, thanks for watching if you've made it this far. And hopefully it's given you a bit of an insight, maybe if you're thinking of buying one. Sort of both sides of the story, really. Personally, I've got one. Would I buy another one? I think so. I think I'd probably try. Really, I wanted a 4.4 V8 petrol one, but they don't do those in manual. That's possibly a thing for the future for this, if the crank snaps. Try and get hold of a 4.4 petrol engine, stick that in, because apparently the Bellhausen pattern is the same. I don't know of anyone that's done a manual V8 swap, but that would be something I would possibly consider if it did go bang. So yeah, I think I probably would get another one if it was this sort of price. I don't think I'd be paying any more than sort of 3-4 grand for one. I think when you start getting up at that kind of price range, you feel obliged to fix a lot more. Yes, it's going to be a nice car to begin with, but yeah, I don't know. I think for much more than 5 grand, I think you can get a nicer Jap, more reliable, should I say, not nicer, because it won't be as nice as this inside. A more reliable Jap truck. I think that would probably be where I'd be at. I think if I was to get another truck and I only had a small budget like this again, yes, I would definitely get another one of these, 100%. If I had more of a budget, I would probably look at a Land Cruiser. Probably, I think that would probably be the next level up to this. I think just as much off-road capability, but with a bit more reliability. So yeah, thank you very much for watching the video. If you've got any comments of anything you've seen, anything I've said wrong, or anything I don't agree with, or if there's anything you want to see in the future, any videos you want to see in the future, then leave a comment. I think I'm starting to get the hang of this now a bit. I've also got a new computer, so I can edit them a bit quicker and easier, so I think I might start doing a few more of these. I'm going to hoping to do an update on the Mini soon. We're in March. I'm hoping to get it back on the road for April. Got a couple of little issues, well, not issues, but things to finish off before I get it back on the road. Try and get it a bit more watertight, and still got the original videos to upload from when I was building it. Again, so now I've got a new PC, I can edit those a bit easier, so I'll probably try and get those all on fairly sharpish, I think, just so people can sort of see the end of that story. Yeah, so I think I might do a few more of these videos now. I'm starting to get the hang of it. I quite enjoy it, and so far on the videos they seem to have fairly good responses, so you know, I'll keep making the videos as long as people keep watching them. So yeah, don't forget to subscribe so you can see any future uploads, and I will see you soon. Thank you.